Picture this: a beautiful summer afternoon in an upscale neighborhood in Atlanta. James Powell, a former police officer with 15 years of service, is finally living his dream after years of saving every penny and working overtime shifts. He managed to buy his dream house, a stunning 2-story home with a crystal-clear swimming pool that sparkles under the Georgia sun. But his moment of peace is about to be shattered. As James reclines in his lounge chair, eyes closed and enjoying the warm breeze, police sirens pierce the tranquility. 2 patrol cars screech to a halt in front of his house. The officers, hands on their holsters, approach his fence. "Sir, we received a report of suspicious individual trespassing in this pool area." James sits up, a familiar knot forming in his stomach. He knows exactly who made that call. Through the corner of his eye, he catches a glimpse of his neighbor, Linda Matthews, peeking through her curtains with a smug smile on her face. This isn't the first time she's pulled something like this, and little does she know it's about to be her last. Let me take you back to where it all began. 2 months earlier, James was proudly moving into his new home. After a decade and a half of protecting and serving, he'd finally achieved what his parents could only dream of: owning a house in one of Atlanta's most prestigious neighborhoods. The previous owners had maintained the property beautifully, especially the backyard pool that had caught James's eye from day one. He was arranging his patio furniture when he first noticed her. Linda Matthews, standing in her second-floor window, phone pressed against her ear, staring intently at him. James waved politely, but she quickly disappeared behind her curtains. The next day, while James was at the hardware store, his security camera pinged. There she was, Linda, walking through his unlocked back gate like she owned the place. Wearing a designer swimsuit and carrying a luxury beach towel, she casually laid her things on his pool chair and dipped her feet in his pool. When James returned and confronted her, Linda's reaction was unforgettable. "Oh," she said, feigning surprise, hand to her chest. "I thought you were the new pool maintenance man. The previous owners always let me use their pool." Her condescending smile made his blood boil, but years of police training had taught him to stay calm. "Ma'am, I'm not the maintenance man. I'm the new owner," James replied professionally, "and I'd appreciate it if you'd ask permission before entering my property." Linda's face twisted into an expression of disbelief. "You the owner?" She laughed nervously. "There must be some mistake. I know the realtor handling this property, and she never mentioned." She gestured vaguely at him, leaving the racial implication hanging in the air. "There's no mistake, Mrs. Matthews. This is my home, and you're trespassing. Please leave." James's voice remained steady, but inside, he was counting at 10 as Linda gathered her things, muttering under her breath, "We'll see about that." Over the next few weeks, Linda's behavior went from annoying to outrageous. One Saturday morning, James woke up to voices and splashing. Looking through his window, he couldn't believe his eyes. Linda had brought 4 of her friends for a pool party in his backyard. "Ladies, you need to leave immediately," James announced, stepping onto his patio. "This is private property." "Oh, don't be difficult," Linda waved dismissively. "We're just having a little fun. Besides, this pool barely gets any use." Her friends looked uncomfortable, shifting in their designer swimsuits. "Linda told us she had permission," one woman whispered, quickly gathering her things. James maintained his composure, remembering his de-escalation training. "Mrs. Matthews, this is your final warning. The next time you trespass, I'm calling police." "Go ahead," Linda sneered, being the last to leave. "I know everyone at the precinct. My husband plays golf with Captain Richards." That afternoon, James installed security cameras. He'd learned from his years on the force, document everything. Within days, the cameras caught Linda testing his gate, peering through his windows, and even attempting to use her own key copy from previous owners. The final straw came when she hosted her book club. James returned from grocery shopping to find 8 women in his backyard, drinking wine and lounging by his pool. This time, he did call the police. Officers Davis and Martinez arrived. "James, long time no see," Officer Davis started, then noticed the situation. "Oh, it's this kind of call." Linda immediately switched to tears. "Officers, I'm so glad you're here. This man is harassing us. We've always had pool privileges with the previous owners, and he's being completely unreasonable." "Ma'am," Officer Martinez interrupted. "Mr. Powell was one of our best officers. If he says you're trespassing, you're trespassing. Please leave before we have to make this official." As the women hurried out, Linda's face turned red with humiliation. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You don't belong here, and I'll make sure everyone knows it." Linda's campaign against James took a darker turn. Suddenly mysterious. Concerned neighbors were posting on the community Facebook page about suspicious activities at his address. His morning newspaper started disappearing. Anonymous complaints about his unkempt yard flooded the HOA, despite his lawn being perfectly maintained. But James hadn't spent 15 years in law enforcement without learning a thing or two about gathering evidence. His cameras caught Linda stealing his newspaper at 6 a.m., photographing his house at odd hours, and even sprinkling plant killer on his prize roses under cover of darkness. During the monthly HOA meeting, Linda played her biggest card yet. "I'm concerned about property values," she announced to the room, shooting James a side glance. "Some recent changes in the neighborhood have made my potential buyers uncomfortable." James calmly stood up, phone in hand. "Interesting. You should mention property values. Mrs. Matthews, would you like to explain this footage of you vandalizing my garden last Tuesday at 11:47 p.m.? The room fell silent as he played the crystal-clear video. Linda's face turned pale, but she quickly recovered. "I was checking for suspicious activity," she said, her voice shaking. "Someone's been damaging properties in the neighborhood." "Yes," James replied coolly. "And now we all know who that someone is." That evening, James discovered his pool water had been tampered with. It was filled with dish soap that would take days to filter out. As he watched the bubbles float across his once pristine pool, a plan began forming in his mind. If Linda wanted to play games with his pool, maybe it was time to give her exactly what she wanted, with a little twist. James did his research carefully. The dye he ordered was completely safe, used by professional pool maintenance companies to detect leaks. The best part? It only reacted with specific chemicals found in expensive sunscreens and cosmetics, exactly the kind Linda and her friends slathered on before their unauthorized swims. He tested it first in a small bucket with some of Linda's favorite brand of sunscreen, which he'd noticed left behind on his pool chairs. The result was perfect. A bright, unmistakable green that would take at least a week to fade naturally. Not harmful, not permanent, just incredibly embarrassing. Through the neighborhood grapevine, James learned that Linda was planning another unauthorized pool party that weekend. He prepared meticulously, installing 3 additional hidden cameras at different angles. He added the dye to the pool, using the exact concentration recommended by the manufacturer. To anyone looking, the water appeared completely normal, crystal clear and inviting. That afternoon, Linda and her friends showed up as planned, slathering on their expensive sunscreen. The first signs of trouble came when one of Linda's friends, Susan, asked, "Linda, is your skin looking different?" Before long, Linda and her friends were all noticing a distinct green tint spreading across their skin. Panic erupted as they scrambled out of the pool, screaming and grabbing their things. The video hit social media like a green tidal wave. James edited it perfectly, starting with clips of Linda's previous trespassing incidents, followed by the pool party disaster, all set to the same jazz music they'd been playing. Within hours, it had millions of views across multiple platforms. Local news stations picked up the story. "Trespassing Linda Gets Green with Envy" became the trending headline. James didn't say a word. He just enjoyed his pool, waving cheerfully whenever he spotted a green-tinted figure peeking through neighboring curtains. Linda's attempt to salvage her reputation only dug her deeper into a green-tinted hole. The video of Linda and her friends splashing around in the green-tinged pool quickly spiraled into a viral sensation. What James had anticipated was more than just embarrassment. It was an utter downfall for Linda. The community that once looked up to her as a respectable, affluent neighbor now saw her as nothing more than a petty, vindictive woman willing to cross any line to make her point. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, messages, and emails. James's phone was flooded with apologies and support messages from neighbors who were either unaware of Linda's behavior or had been too afraid to speak out. Everyone had witnessed her self-righteous attitude firsthand, but they didn't realize how far she'd gone until the video made its rounds. The HOA president called James to personally apologize, stating that Linda was being investigated for trespassing, vandalism, and harassment. "We're going to do everything we can to make sure she no longer causes problems in this neighborhood," he assured him. "You've been an outstanding neighbor, and we're grateful for your patience." James didn't care about the apologies. What mattered was that Linda's attempts to ruin him were now exposed for everyone to see. The police were involved, but Linda had a knack for twisting the narrative to her favor. So James knew it would take more than just public shaming to put an end to her campaign of harassment. Days passed, and Linda's humiliation only deepened. She'd attempted to convince the media that the pool incident was a mistake, but no one was buying it. In fact, people were starting to ask questions about her history of dishonesty and her long track record of exploiting her neighbor's goodwill for her own benefit. James wasn't satisfied with just watching her fall apart. He needed to make sure this woman would never bother him again, and that his neighbors would understand the depths of her manipulation. He contacted his old police connections, and after a few conversations, he received something he'd been hoping for: a long list of Linda's minor infractions, complaints, and incidents with the law. None of it had been enough for a formal charge, but together, it painted a picture of a woman who thrived on control, deceit, and intimidation. James was about to turn the tables. He knew that Linda had a reputation for making underhanded deals with contractors and neighbors, all while covering her tracks with her charm. But what if that charm could be used against her? He reached out to a private investigator who specialized in reputation management. Together, they hatched a plan. The goal wasn't just to get Linda out of his life, but to make sure she was exposed for who she truly was. They planted fake social media accounts, anonymously revealing Linda's scheming activities over the years, including her history of manipulating people and making false claims against others. The private investigator had a breakthrough when he discovered that Linda had been involved in a series of small-time scams, convincing local contractors to work on properties under false pretenses. She'd then disappear, leaving them with unpaid bills and unfinished jobs. A few more calls to former employees revealed that Linda had been running a side hustle, buying and reselling stolen goods on the black market. James was in awe of how far Linda had gone to manipulate those around her. He felt a strange satisfaction knowing that the pieces were finally coming together, but he didn't want to act too quickly. He needed the final bit of evidence, something that would completely destroy her credibility. That's when he found it: a series of emails she'd sent to local authorities, making false accusations against James. She had even gone so far as to imply he was involved in illegal activities, hoping to sway the authorities in her favor. The timing was too perfect. Her attempt to frame him now made it clear that she was the one who was guilty of malicious intent all along. It was an early evening when Linda made her final move. She showed up at James's house, her face twisted in anger, and her voice rising as she demanded he remove the online posts. "You think you can just get away with this? You're ruining my life." Linda screamed. James met her at the front door, standing tall, his calm demeanor the only thing that kept her from flying off the handle. He hadn't called the police yet. He didn't need to. He had everything he needed. "Linda, I didn't ruin your life," James said calmly. "You did that all on your own." She recoiled, confused by his calmness. "What the hell are you talking about? I know everything about you. The scams, the lies, the manipulation. You're not fooling anyone anymore." Linda's eyes widened. She reached into her purse as though she were looking for a weapon, but James wasn't afraid. He stood his ground, watching her every move, the sense of control now in his hands. "You have no idea what you're messing with," Linda hissed, her voice trembling with rage. "I'm not the one who's messed with anything. You've been messing with everyone around here, but I'm not letting you get away with it anymore." Before she could say anything else, James pulled out his phone and showed her the incriminating evidence: the emails, the social media posts, the contractor's reports, all neatly compiled in one folder. Linda took a step back, her face turning pale. She knew she had been caught, but her pride wouldn't allow her to admit defeat. You can either leave peacefully, or I can make sure everyone sees exactly who you are, James said, his voice unwavering. Linda's shoulders slumped. With one last glare, she turned and walked off the porch, disappearing into the night. The next day, Linda packed her things and moved out of the neighborhood. Her reputation, once untouchable, was now in ruins. The community that had once accepted her had turned their backs, and her carefully constructed facade of wealth and respectability had crumbled into dust. James, on the other hand, could finally breathe easy. His life was his own again, free from the constant harassment and tension that had plagued him for so long.